The end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. I got my magic pen in my hand. We're going to get on the Sharp Interactive board. We're going to talk about Konica's financials. Folks, you know, a lot of you are already thinking, Ray, why are you always picking on Konica? Konica shares an interesting story. You know, folks, for the last decade, I've been telling everybody in the imaging channel, you got to diversify. Those mega dealers, get out there and diversify. You know, you got to go into your customers that buy your print equipment and get more technology spend from them and profits from that spend. You can't just rely on the printed page. Everybody knows this. Well, if you look at Konica and if you look at Ricoh, two OEMs got into IT services. Konica Minolta bought All Covered about a little over a decade ago. Ricoh bought MindShift about 6-7 years ago. But yet both Ricoh and Konica are actually showing the worst financials of most of the OEMs in the space. And so today I want to analyze some of the Konica financials. I want to ask some questions. You know, the bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, Konica Minolta's had a lot of press in our industry. And, you know, when I hear things like, you know, they increased their profit margin X percentage, even though it's still below zero, and they increased it against a number that was below zero, why don't they just say Konica Minolta is still in a negative operating position and address that reality? We don't need to give some false sense of hope that everything's okay. And when I read these financials and I read all the language around the financials, there was some interesting things. And so today I want to get on my Sharp Interactive board and I want to share some questions. And I'm hoping that maybe the industry's analysts will start asking some real questions of Konica. Because, you know, at the end of the day, we can't sugarcoat things to a point of absurdity. You know, we just can't keep doing this. We're never going to fix things. We have enough consultants in the place. We don't need more Konica executives, you know, leaving, becoming consultants. What they really need to do is focus on fixing Konica. And when I read these financials and I read all the reports around these financials, I'm not sure they're going to do it. And it's quite scary. So without any further ado, let's just pull up my first slide here. And this first slide is something I put together because I like to take a calculator in my imagination, look at the realities all around us, and make sense out of what's in front of me when I'm reading. I like to read between the lines. I like to question the hype and the nonsense because there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of audacious, bodacious goals that are like, how are you going to possibly reach those? Give us some details, because what you're doing today doesn't indicate that you're going to reach any of these goals. And we can't ask these questions. Why? You know, the OEMs, they've gotten away with you know, writing their own press releases around their own financials, and then they send it to the blog people and they say, hey, copy and paste this on your blog and don't ask us any questions. Copy and paste what we tell you about our financials. That's all your readers need to know. Maybe that's why the end of the day with Ray is gaining in so much momentum. But ladies and gentlemen, the first thing I want to do is I want to pull up some other OEMs numbers for their second quarters, right? And I want to talk about operating profit, because if you don't make any money, regardless of what you're trying to do, you got to make money, right? We all know that. So the first thing I want to do is get my Sharp Interactive board working here. And let's just start with our friends over at Sharp. The 8K ecosystems, where the print systems live, all the things that the document imaging channel sells from Sharp. Guess what? Their operating profit is 4.2%. I know you can't read this, folks. It's just so I can share these numbers with you. I can't memorize all these numbers, right? But Sharp, 8K ecosystems, 4.2% operating profit. Now, it's not a grand slam, but it's above zero. Let's look at our friends over at Kyocera. Folks, this is really interesting. Kyocera Document Solutions Unit, 9%. 9% operating profit. You know, Oscar, you know, your team and the leaders that lead you, I mean, you guys are killing it. Keep up the great work, 9%. You know, it'd be nice if you get the double digits, but I think you're going to get there pretty solid, pretty quick. Let's look at our friends over at Xerox, 4.2% operating profit. Again, not a grand slam. Of course, Xerox is not an OEM. Remember, I keep telling everybody they're the largest dealer in the world. They're going to figure this out, and trust me, when they figure it out, they're going to cause a lot of havoc to a whole lot of status quo. Let's look at our friends over here at Ricoh. Ricoh had a 1.6% operating profit. IT services, digitalization, all the fluff language they talk about, but at the end of the day, it's not really moving the needle for them. They got rid of a whole bunch of their direct operations back in 2017. They need to get rid of the rest, obviously. But, you know, their numbers above zero. Konica Minolta. Let's just talk about it. Konica Minolta, digital workplace business. That's the place we all live in, right? Negative 4.3 billion yen in the hole. In the hole, folks. Now, we could say they had a 4.9 billion improvement over the last quarter, but that was still below zero. And folks, I realize this may be harsh for some people, but it's the reality. It's the reality. If you listen to the industry's analysts and media around Konica, you'd think nothing at all was going on there. We've seen some of their senior leaders talking about how they're kicking butt in IT services. I didn't see that phrase anywhere in this document. And these documents are all online. They're all on their websites. Go look at them, read them. That's why they're there. You know, don't just assume that what you're reading in some of these blogs is the real story. It's a story that was copied and pasted from the OEMs themselves. So ladies and gentlemen, let's start asking some questions. Let me clear this off here. Let me pull up this next slide. This next slide is interesting to me, and this applies to all the OEMs. I want you to pay attention as I talk to this slide. So Konica Minolta, DX 2022, digital transformation. We've got to digitally transform ourselves, and then we're going to go to our customers and help them digitize themselves. Everybody's going to be in this digital landscape. Oh my gosh, things are going to be fantastic. Here's the reality. Digitalization, whether you call it DX, whatever you call it, that's just permission to show up in 2022, folks. You have to be doing these things. You have to be doing these things, especially if you're a global leader. But I want you to read this. 2030 long-term management vision. And I'm going to read this out loud, and this applies to every single OEM. Quit doing this nonsense. Let me just read this. A global company that is vital to society, bringing vision to reality. A robust and innovative company, continually evolving and contributing to the sustainable growth of society and individuals. What the hell is that? Folks, that is just permission to show up. Be good to the world. Be good to society. Be good to the environment. Help people become more digital. I mean, this is just permission to show up. And you OEMs that keep, talking about the same old nonsense. Let's get a little bit more specific in what you're trying to do to help people. Be more specific, because it's in specificity that you focus on reality and make sure that what you're delivering actually makes sense and is profitable. Too broad of a statement can be just convoluted. It ends up being rhetoric. And so let me go to this next slide. I want to go back here for a second, folks. If you look at Konica Minolta from 2003, and this bottom part here, they haven't really moved the needle on their revenue top line number since 2003. I mean, they came up in 2006, 2007. They haven't gone higher than 2007's number. That was a long time ago. We're going into 2022. So all the things they're adding, all the things they're doing, it's just keeping them flat. That's not very good, because if you think about it, they have dropped in print, but they'll be the ones that brag about how it's not really dropped that much, right? People in the print world don't want to even talk about the declines in print. And if the declines in print were dropping, you're adding all these other things, you should be going above it. Remember the videos and the talk track where I talk about how IT services is only 1.2% of the spend of a company's technology spend? It's 1.2%. Could you imagine over the last 10 years if Konica was really focused on IT and they had to share their numbers publicly, drill down to the details of what they're selling and been real specific about it? They probably would have drove behaviors. They probably would have done things a little bit different, and they'd probably be getting a whole lot more revenue from those accounts that are just about print. That's the reality. We should be growing our revenue substantially as we move into IT. It shouldn't remain flat. It should supersede what we were doing in print. That's the goal. That's the goal for success, right? We want to supersede what we're losing. And we want to build massive organizations around technology services and transformation services and helping customers navigate through that digital intersection between the physical and digital world, all this fun, great stuff, right? It's got to start working for Konica. It's got to start working for Ricoh. That's why I keep saying OEMs, they can't sell stuff outside of what they make. It just isn't seem to be working. It's not working over at Ricoh, and it's not working over at Konica. Let's just be honest about it. If we can't be honest about it, how are we going to really address the problems? Because I'm afraid dealers look at this and they listen to some rhetoric, or they look at the copy and pasted report the OEM gave the blog holder, and they think everything's okay. They think, hey, I could do the same thing Konica's doing. Well, no, you can't, because you don't want to lose money, right? You can't be losing money. And there's a whole lot of things we can blame the loss of money on. Print decline, COVID, the big earthquake that we had in Japan a while back. Konica's coming up now on this, replacing the stuff that was burned in that terrible fire they had. I need to go back to a slide here real quick while I bring that up. If you look at Konica's professional print, that would be their production print. A lot of that toner got, hurt that fire thing. If you look at the profit on that, it was 1.4 billion yen. And basically, it's a little over 1% of the revenue in that space. Okay? So 1%. 1% doesn't give you enough money when there's a disaster. It will be really interesting how they come out in this next half. Will that 1% turn back into below the line? I mean, folks, there's some pressure that got put on Konica because of the disaster that happened. And that's why you can't run with these small operating margins. So let's go back to where we were. So ladies and gentlemen, this next slide I want to talk to you about is some aspirations. Okay? I mean, Konica's got aspirations like everybody else. And so in 2020, they had a negative 16.2 billion yen operating profit. That was the reality. Operating profit plan, 16.2 billion yen negative in 2020. In 2021, which will end, okay, the 2021 year for Konica will end in March of 2022. They're 6 months into it. And basically, 6 months into it, they're nowhere near this number of 36 billion yen profit. Do we need to go back to that slide? Let's go back to that slide. Right now, if you took all Konica's business segments, the digital workplace, professional print, healthcare business, and the industry business, which, by the way, the industry business, they're doing pretty damn good. I mean, they put 14.4 billion yen to the bottom line. Maybe those executives should move up to the business unit, the workplace business. But folks, if you look at their total operating profit is 6.2 billion yen halfway through the year for the whole company. They got to go from 6.2 billion yen all the way up to, what was that number? 36 billion? I don't see how that's possible. We'll see. 2022 plan gets even better. So their 2022 year will end in March of 2023. They're going to put 55 billion yen to the bottom line, operating profit. Really? 55 billion? Folks, they haven't had a 55 billion yen profit for a long, long time. How are they going to do it? How are they going to come out of this? How are they possibly going to come out of this? These are good questions that we ought to be asking. They should be able to clarify that in a little more detail. They're showing 2030 over here with they're almost using your imagination. You go, oh, it's going to go way up there. Folks, the bottom line is, just because you want to get there doesn't mean you're going to get there. And if you haven't shown the world your track record for getting there, it just becomes what I call rhetoric. Let's pull up the next slide. Everybody wants to get into this Internet of Things. Konica kicked off Forex AI. I will say this about Forex AI. It's too close to the name of the ERP system that was going to change the entire document imaging channel. That basically didn't really do that. It just changed hands, and now Konica has it. I think you should think about that name. But here's the deal. Oh, see, now everybody's saying, oh, Ray, that was terrible. That was vicious. But folks, here's the problem with our industry. We know things out there don't make any sense. We all talk about how they don't make any sense. But yet publicly we don't want to say anything because it might be offensive to somebody or it might make somebody cry or whatever the reason is. And the problem is a lot of people don't understand really what's going on because of all the noise and nonsense about how great everything is. And I think it's time that we start addressing the realities and we start being more specific. Show some specificity before you talk about the greatness. Because we don't do that near enough, folks. But the bottom line is the Internet of Things platform, that's again permission to show up. Going into 2022, I don't care who you are or what industry you're from, you better have an IoT platform, right? And folks, if you're in the document imaging channel, you're one of these OEMs that provide equipment to the people that sell print, supply print, and service print. You're one of these OEMs. Your Internet of Things programs, you're not going to compete with each other there. I don't know. What do you think? That, Kyocera is going to come out with a better Internet of Things and they're going to be able to beat Sharp at their Internet of Things, and Lexmark's Internet of Things is going to be able to beat Canon, and Canon's going to be able to beat... Folks, this is nuts. Maybe you could do that with A3 equipment, back when A3 equipment was relevant to end users. But the Internet of Things, you're going to have so many competitors coming from so many places that you can't even imagine. And obviously you're not. You're thinking your Internet of Things platform is going to compete against the other Internet of Things platform. Every OEM is going to have one. I talked about Lexmark and Optria, just a couple weeks ago. So let's really pay attention to what are you really going to do with your Internet of Things? What is it really about? Is it about documents? Is it about imaging systems? I mean, what are you really going to do? Is it about augmented reality, like my friends over at Xerox? What's it about? What are you going to do? What kind of robotic technologies are you going to use? And AI are you going to use? What are the outcomes you're really trying to solve problems with? We got to talk about the outcomes, the problems we're going to be solving around our Internet of Things. Not just that we're going to come up with some fancy name and call it Internet of Things. And it seems to me that that's kind of what we're seeing right now. We need more specificity. When you're specific, you focus. When you focus, guess what? You make sure those business processes are the best they possibly can be and they're profitable along the way. Got to be profitable. Ladies and gentlemen, this last slide I want to show you is one that's probably the most disturbing. And I want to share why I believe it's disturbing. Do you remember when Ricoh said that most of their operating profit wasn't going to come from their core deliverable of print, and the whole world went crazy? Remember, they had just appointed the new Ricoh president. He had to run around and tell everybody how, oh my gosh, I didn't mean to say it that way. That was press. They were making stuff up. That's not what we meant. Well, clearly it is what they meant. They even showed a little slide, just like Konica showing here today. But the industry got so upset with it. I guess you had dealers putting their hands over their heads, laying on their desk crying, oh my gosh, my core manufacturer's not going to be serious about print. What am I going to do? I haven't done anything to transition my business. It's all about print for me. And now my OEM is saying, hey, wait a second, we're going to go way past print. Well, Konica's doing the same thing. And this is what's struggling to me, because the way they're talking about this business unit, that they're going to decrease in their operating profit. Well, let me just show you here. Let me get my Sharp interactive board working here. I got to circle some things because these are just questions. I wish the other analysts would ask these damn questions. I wouldn't be all by myself in this. Of course, that's probably not going to happen. But here, 2021 plan is for the office printing business is the majority. It's 53%, right? And this is of their operating profit. This is what we're talking about. It's 53%. In this business unit of office printing business is their IT business. It's this 98% of all the other money that their customers spend. So you would think that the profit would be growing in that, not shrinking. This is what I don't understand, and that needs to be clarified. Because they say by the year 2025, it's only going to represent 24% of their operating profit. They're going to shed reliance on office printing business. But yet in the office printing business is where they have their IT business, right? I mean, did I miss something? Because I don't see where they show IT in these other categories. You got healthcare is the purple, 20%. You got the industry business, which is 36%. And then you got 19% over here, which is 10% here, which is professional print, production print, right? So, by the way, production print's going to go from 10% in 2021 to 19% in 2025. So let's hopefully figure this out, that if 10% of their operating profits coming from production print in 2021, we all just saw that it was like 1% in that category. You see how you start asking questions and you start analyzing this stuff, it kind of gets a little bit like, wow, yeah, what the hell? And it's in these what the hell questions that would drive specific answers to help really focus and fix things the right way. But I would ask everybody, how do you shed operating profit from 53% in 2021 to 24% in the business sector that we all live in for Konica? How do you shed that? One way is to shed a whole bunch of costs, get rid of all your direct operations. Folks, I'm telling you, they're going to get rid of the direct operations. They could go in, they could do a video, they could do an interview, they could say squashing the rumors, but at the end of the day, that's one way to get rid of your operating profit. I don't know what, that number should grow like crazy. If they're going to really start selling IT services are extremely profitable. They are if you do it right. if you understand who the customer is, if you understand who the deliverable is. So this is just a big question. How do we go from 53% down to 24%? How do we do that? If we're going to digitize our customers, if we're going to digitally transform our customers, if we're going to have the Internet of Things, if we're going to offer IT services, security services, penetration testing, voice over IP services, all these things live in that business group, don't they? Or what am I missing? Because, folks, that scares the hell out of me. I mean, you look at this and you think, well, I don't even know how this makes sense. It looks to me like we're going to have a whole lot more executives coming out of Konica starting consulting firms if we don't turn this around. Anyway, let me go ahead and shed this page off. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to close with this. We have got to be able to look at the industry's OEMs, and we have to be able to have factual conversations with them based on realities of what's going in our marketplace. Our analysts and our press out there have to hold the OEMs accountable to a better standard. Have to start asking them more specific questions around their financials. Because the bottom line is, a lot of y'all read some of this nonsense and rhetoric and you think, oh, let's do that. Well, don't do that if it's going to not make you any money. That's not going to work. And where are you going to be with your OEMs? When your OEMs talk about reducing the operating profit from their core business part, right? From 53% down to 24%, I would want to know, how does that work and look for you in 2025 if you're one of their partners? Whether that's Ricoh, whether that's Konica, whether that's Canon. Canon's another one. There's no way they're going to have these direct operations. You know, even Frank Canada did a video on one of his Fridays with Frank talking about it. Most logical people know you can't have OEMs making stuff and then going into the marketplace trying to sell these other services. It just doesn't work. And so how's it going to work for Konica in the year 2025? How are they going to increase their operating profit from below the line to the numbers I just showed you? How are they going to do that? What's the path? Surely the path can't be about we're going to be good for society. We're going to be a sustainable company. We're going to treat the world really nice and hopefully they'll buy our stuff and we'll make a lot of money. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a lot of issues at stake here. Our industry's in the worst situation it's ever been in. And that situation ain't going to get any better. What's going to get better, what has to get better, is those that lead our industry face the realities all around them and drive the industry into a different place. I realize that people will still print, but they're not going to print enough to keep you in the current circumstances of 1990 anymore. Times are changing drastically, and everybody watching me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.